Assalamu Alaikum, guys. Ramadan is almost upon us, and I wanted to take this time to give you a framing of Ramadan that I'm entering Ramadan with that I think is going to really, inshallah, help me. And I wanted to share it with you so it could help you too. So, the framing is that most people view Ramadan, I think, as like a sprint to do as many good deeds as possible. Like a lot of the rhetoric that I hear, especially when it comes to like Ramadan reminders, it almost like it gives me this vibe of like, I'm preparing for this like all out um race to where I'm going to go as fast as possible. I'm going to go all in, like this is it, right? But I think while there's nothing necessarily wrong with this framing of Ramadan, something that's been a little bit more beneficial to me personally, especially considering that, the ultimate goal is closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is to instead view Ramadan not just as a time to where you increase in good, but also a perfect opportunity to where you can identify the bad in your life, i.e., in this case, the addictions slash sins that are preventing you from really feeling that closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then use that natural spiritual momentum that you feel in Ramadan and use that natural detachment from your normal routine that you feel in Ramadan as an opportunity to address those exact addictions and to lean into like a new potential identity that you can develop within this month. So what do I mean by that? Well, all of us have a certain view of ourselves, and I think that that view oftentimes is informed at its deepest level by our values. So if I value, for example, uh, my desires over my spiritual progress or my connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that's going to cause me to make certain decisions, right? And if I make these decisions for long enough, eventually these decisions become a part of my identity. And then it's no longer becomes as easy to like go to the masjid or to pray salah because it's not just one hurdle that I'm getting over, which is that, I'm having to choose this value I'm not used to choosing. But it's also that I have to get over the other hurdle that I have to get over this identity that I've created for myself, that I'm not really that religious person who goes to the mosque and does these things. That's not really me. So it doesn't really feel right. But Ramadan is that perfect time for you to spend 30 days crafting that new identity. And everyone is going to give you that room to do so, right? Because this is like the time where everyone just expects that, yeah, of course you're going to start praying. And of course you're going to start reciting Quran. And of course you're going to stop talking to your, haram boyfriend or girlfriend. And this is the time, this is the time where people make those types of changes within their life. And so it is that perfect opportunity for you to lean into that new identity and for you to test out a new set of values and to feel the sweetness of those new values so that by the end of Ramadan, you actually can maintain certain aspects of your new lifestyle because you've verified and tested that this lifestyle actually is one that is worth living. And you truly believe that now because you've seen the benefits of it. You've seen how it can transform yourself and your soul. So I would say that before Ramadan starts, really take some time to assess your own personal relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And even just your relationship with Allah's creation, like how you treat other people, your character, and even your relationship with yourself. How do you speak to yourself? What standards, what pressure do you put on yourself versus how much do you just leave up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? All of these different components, because we have a relationship with Allah, we have a relationship with others, we have a relationship with ourselves. These are all three relationships that, we're constantly managing within our lives. I would say assess all three of these relationships and determine not just quantitatively, like what do I want to accomplish in these realms, right? Like listing out, oh, I want to pray this many rakats of tarawih and tahajjud every single night, or I want to donate this much, or I want to smile to this many people, or give salam to this many people. These type of like quantitative goals. Instead, focus on qualitative uh, improvements in these aspects, in the all of these aspects of your life. And most importantly, when it comes to these improvements, focus on removing the hurdles that are preventing us from taking that next step forward, right? Because I heard a quote the other like a while back, and I think it really captures what I'm trying to say, which is that if you're trying to succeed at something, don't just focus on success, right? But then also focus on identifying all of the potential avenues for failure and eliminate those avenues for failure. Because if you've eliminated the ways in which you could possibly fail, then success becomes a natural outcome, right? And that's kind of what I'm trying to say here, that in all of these relationships that we have with Allah, with others, with ourselves, there is a lot of ways we can potentially fail. And maybe we have failed in a lot of ways. And we see these patterns again and again. There's this clear sin, this clear addiction that's preventing me from taking that next step forward with Allah. Or there's this clear habit that I have with other people. Maybe it's that I backbite too often. Maybe it's that I'm too impulsive when I speak to other people. I'm too dominating in the conversation. I don't let them speak enough. I'm not a good listener. I need to develop more empathy. All of these different type of traits that are qualitative. These are not quantitative things. They're qualitative. You kind of get a feel for them and a vibe for them through conversations, but they're bad. They're things you need to remove from your life. Try to identify those things and remove them, because if you can remove them, then naturally I think it will be easier for you to have better character with other people, because you're eliminating those key vices that you have that are preventing you from treating other people well, right? And same thing with your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you can remove those sins, if you can remove those addictions, then those are the key things that are preventing you from tasting that sweetness in your prayer, right? And we learn this is very like in line with what the Prophet ﷺ tells us, because we learned that, the Prophet ﷺ said that if the heart is clean, the heart is sound, the rest of the body is sound. If the heart is not sound, the rest of the body will not be sound. I.e., if your heart is filled with love of things, of love of yourself, love of a person, love of a certain environment, love of materialism, love of greed, love of wealth, love of status, fame, and that you place love of these things where the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should have been, then it's no wonder that when you pray, you can't focus on your prayer. Or when you recite Quran, you can't really reflect on it, right? Because that desire, that deep, deep desire to want to be close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to want to prioritize Allah, that's not there, because you've allowed other things to replace that. Last thing I'll say to kind of tie this all together is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, when He introduces the concept of fasting to us, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. So fasting has been prescribed upon you, just as fasting was prescribed upon the people before you, so that you may attain taqwa, so that you can attain God consciousness, right? And this concept of taqwa, of being conscious of God, I think this is the very essence of what we should be focused on in Ramadan, is maximizing moments where we are most conscious of Allah. And that's going to come in a variety of ways depending on which relationship you're talking about. So if you're talking about your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly, when you have an opportunity to give into that addiction that you've identified that is preventing you from loving Allah and placing Allah where He belongs in your life as a priority, catching yourself in that moment, and instead prioritizing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by, maybe it could be, choosing to pray your salah on time, right? Instead of giving in to whatever, sin that is, or addiction that is preventing you from doing so. Or choosing to maybe replace, for example, music with the recitation of Quran. Or choosing to replace the attention that you were giving to a person or an environment that is holding you back from your connection with Allah, and instead replacing that with an environment or with people that are going to bring you closer to Allah. Catching yourself in those moments where you lose that consciousness of God and bringing that back to stop yourself and prevent yourself from these addictions that are sucking you further and further away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when it comes to your relationship with others, that could come in the form of identifying those moments where you would have backbitten, you would have cut someone off mid sentence, you would have um, not listened to when your mother was speaking to you or your father or your friend. You're in the middle of a conversation, maybe you're thinking about something else, but they're saying something that's really important. Maybe you're in a group setting and there's someone that you're not giving enough attention to. All these different scenarios that happening where you aren't giving someone the attention or the level of respect and dignity they deserve, and you catch yourself and you prevent yourself from giving into that thing that you're about to do, that neglect that you're about to give that person. You stop that and you prevent that. Finding more moments like that. And then finally, in the relationship with yourself, finding more moments where you can catch yourself and be like, you know what? This dialogue that I'm having with myself, it's not a healthy dialogue. It's not a merciful dialogue. It's not the way that I should be speaking to myself, you know? This is kind of a side thing, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala introduces himself as the most merciful in the Quran, right? Over and over again. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is constantly referring back to his mercy, right? Whenever we recite a Quran, we have to start with that. So if the creator chose to, introduce himself with mercy, then the way that we treat ourselves has to also start from a place of mercy, right? Because we are the creation of the most merciful, of the one who chose to introduce himself with mercy. So we should try to emulate that mercy as well, all the way to the level of mercy in our own thoughts of ourselves. And so, yeah, that is really the message that I wanted to get across to all of y'all, that don't just chase numbers on a page or chase goals, but chase those moments of God consciousness. Take care. Till next time. Assalamu alaikum. May peace be upon you all.